Welcome to the Fall 2020 Ladies Big Book Study Recording Series. My name is Kimberly and I am a recovered alcoholic. I am the facilitator of a tri-weekly Big Book Study for ladies only, and we record each session so we can share the knowledge along with you. What we do is we read the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous line by line. We pause on each page and have discussion time to share our experience, our strength, and our hope on each page. You are more than welcome to follow along in this series and do the work of the steps of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you do need support at any time, please reach out to me in the Contact Us area of my YouTube channel, and we're happy to provide you with support. The online recordings are open to men and women. Do not be discouraged, gentlemen. Our ladies' point of view may offer you a different perspective. So welcome. I hope you enjoy. Let's go. So we're continuing on in the doctor's opinion, page XXXI. What is the solution? Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be the case of a pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name, and partially recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient had made his own diagnosis and decided his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted barn determined to die. He was rescued by a searching party and, in desperate condition, brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated he thought the treatment a waste of effort unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. His alcoholic problem was so complex and his depression so great that we felt his only hope would be through what we called moral psychology, and we doubted if even that would have any effect. However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. He has not had a drink for many years. I see him now and then, and he is a fine specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. William D. Silkworth, medical doctor. So in that little story, you hear the story of a man who, had all sorts of chronic alcoholism and mental deterioration, and he had the gastric hemorrhage, so his body was failing him. And, he was only living to drink. He's probably got the shakes and the DTs so bad that he has to have that drink to keep him from having seizures, and he's just living day to day just to drink. That's it. There's nothing else for him. He admitted he believed for him that there was no hope, so he was powerless, and he had a step one experience. He admitted he was hopeless. He accepted the plan outlined in this book, and that's in the first and the second story. The second story says he became sold on the ideas contained in this book. And really that's finding hope and hearing somebody's story that they have recovered and you having the idea that this could work for you too. And then both of these men got sober and haven't had drinks in many years. The one alcoholic, walked out of the office and Dr. Silkworth couldn't even believe that he'd even known him. He's like, he's so different. I don't even believe I knew him. Complete change. And then, of course, it says, I advise every alcoholic to read this book through. Not just this first little part that's really well read up to step 4. People love to read 1 to 4 chapters, but they skip out on 5, 6, 7, and 8. But read this book through. Finish it. Get through it. Maybe you will see something. Maybe not in the first 4 chapters. Maybe not in chapter 5 or 6, but maybe something will touch you at some place in this book that will give you that hope, which will open that door to willingness, which will open the door to open-mindedness, which opens the door to recovery. All right, so we will open it up to chat on those pages. You can also discuss anything in the doctor's opinion, because that was the last page, and any questions if you have them. So hands up. Joanne.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joanne. I'm an alcoholic addict. And I want to touch on the last time we read, and we talked about, we heard the phrase, the allergy and a real alcoholic. And when I came into the program, I was young, and to hear old timers, on their little pedestals, like, well, you're not a real alcoholic. And so what I wanted to say was 2 things. Is one, in my own addiction, I'm always looking for a reason to leave. That's the first thing. The second thing is, this is a doctor's opinion, and the idea that there's an allergy, and that's really all well and good, and it has its place. But I think that, and I want to share this, especially with the newcomers, is that if you're drinking and you can't stop, no matter what, you keep trying to stop, and you can't, and you think about it, and the whole committee comes out to talk about, should you drink, should you not drink, and you have a craving, just believe that we believe that that AA can help you stop that insanity and stop. And there are young people, and there are people that come in later that in life that didn't have the troubles, because in my world, front of my house faced the parking lot of a liquor store, so I always had an impression of what a real alcoholic looked like, and I wasn't one of those. And it took me a while to realize that it doesn't matter what other people say. It finally comes down to me being honest with myself and saying, when I pick it up, I can't stop thinking about it. I want it, and it just makes my life unmanageable. And that AA helped stop that. So I just wanted to say that those old people, even though they might have been thinking they were helping by saying, maybe you're not a real alcoholic, they were just giving me a way to give me an excuse to leave. And luckily I had other people around me that were like, yeah, if you drink the way we drink and you identify, here, have a seat. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much. And I absolutely agree. I identify as a real alcoholic because I have that allergy. But I do know people in my close circle that believe that, we should reclaim the fellowship for the real alcoholics. And that's really divisive. I don't agree with that. This program is for anyone who self-diagnoses themselves as an alcoholic. I like the definition on page 44. That's the one I go to, where it says, if you find when you want to stop, you can't, and if you find you can't control how much you take, you're probably an alcoholic, right? My kids are probably alcoholic. Do they have to drink to figure it out? No. We can kind of make a good, reasonable assessment because they have 2 alcoholic addict parents, and they grew up with some dysfunction that they're kind of predisposed, right? Does that mean that they're doomed? No. Does that mean that they can apply this program now? Yeah, absolutely. Our traditions are there to protect our unity, and our unity states that the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. It doesn't say you have to be a real alcoholic, as defined in a doctor's opinion, as someone with the allergy. And it also talks about the different classes into the wives with the 4 different categories. We know this is a progressive illness. If you're a category 2 and you're in the Gulf of the Atlantic, you're going to get to be a category 4 eventually before you make landfall. We don't need to do that here. We can warn people, put up some sandbags, do some steps. Thank you so much, Joanne. Lucille?
I'm Lucille and I'm an alcoholic. I have a question. What is a gastric hemorrhage?
Well, let's go to our resident paramedic, Della. Doesn't sound pretty.
Della, alcoholic. A gastric hemorrhage would mean that your stomach lining has burst and you are now hemorrhaging. So usually a hemorrhage means blood or a let go of, in layman's terms. So a gastric hemorrhage would be, his stomach lining's toast and it's not looking pretty.
Okay. So that would probably be a category 4, like hernia, or what's that called? Stomach, what's it called?
Ulcer.
Yeah, so when your ulcer's just like, he's just toasted out his...
he's toast.
his tummy's not happy.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Deb. Hello.
I'll just share that I worked in ICU, and I didn't understand for a long time. We would get these patients, and they would have this horrible smell, and we'd have to do a procedure on them. And it was the alcoholic who was having a gastric hemorrhage, and they would have this horrible, horrible smell. They'd come in all swollen and yellow, and practically dead. And the doctors, usually were heartbroken working with these patients. So it comes along with a smell, and they're bleeding out all through their bowel and their stomach. And, and really, most of them go on to do it over and over and over. It's very, very sad. So I didn't really realize that until I came to the program that, oh, wow. That's what that was. So it's a very sad thing.
That sounds awful. Thank you so much, Deb. Anybody else on the doctor's opinion? Last call. Moving on to Bill's story. I love Bill's story. Chapter 1, Bill's story. So now we're on page 1. War fever ran high in the New England town to which we knew young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned. We were flattered when the first citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime, with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last, and in the midst of the excitement, I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and prejudices of my people concerning drink. In time, we sailed for over there. I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by an old doggerel on an old tombstone. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier, who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is never forgot, whether he dieth by musket or pot. Ominous warning which I failed to heed. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation? My talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the head of vast enterprises, which I would manage at the utmost assurance. So in here, I like to see a little bit of his ego and the chip on his shoulder. He's come into these homes and he's feeling like a hero. So he's getting all of this praise. He's being worshipped, and he loved it. He thought he had arrived, right? For me, it says the strong warnings and prejudices of my people concerning drink. It's a little bit of foreshadowing that perhaps he knew. Maybe he had this family history or other people had it. So there's a little hint that this might be something that's run in his family, and he's been warned about it. I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. Well, I have that line highlighted and underlined because I can relate. I drank when I was lonely, 100%. And then, of course, the old tombstone where this guy caught his death drinking cold small beer. There's another ominous warning. Imagine now if they put on tombstones all of the people who died of alcoholism or of addiction on top of that, right? Like I know in my community here in British Columbia that the crisis it's worse than the COVID crisis here in my community. Imagine if they put that on people's tombstones. That would be alarming, but they don't. It also says there whether he died by musket or pot. Keep in mind back then, the cups they were drinking out were poisonous. So not only are you drinking yourself to death, you're drinking poison with your poison. Sorry, someone's taking the elevator. Prince. And then, of course, at the bottom again, you hear his bit of that chip on his shoulder, his talent for leadership. He's gotten praise. He's gotten a chip on his shoulder, and so he thinks he's gonna come back to America, and I'm gonna be a big leader because I did good over there, and I'm just gonna transfer my skills over here, do a little pivot, and I'm gonna take myself to the top. So he's chasing something. Hands up. Anybody? More on the first page. For those historians, is he married to Lois already when he goes to war? Any historians in the house? I don't think so. Or did he get married before he went to war? Did anybody know? Beth?
I read it. I don't think he was.
I don't think so either.
I do know that the ominous warning was from his grandfather. And they were sitting outside of the church when his grandfather warned him about the alcohol. But I can research whether he was already married or not.
Okay.
They were married in 1918,
Wow.
January 24th.
So that would be before the war.
Before, yeah.
Yeah, because didn't back then you used to get married right away before you went to war?
Yeah.
Kiss and bye or whatever it was called. Yeah.
Before he shipped off to Europe in the First World War.
Yep. Perfect. Thank y'all. I love my AA history. Anne-Marie.
Hi, I'm Anne-Marie. I'm an alcoholic. I recognized myself right away. I fancied myself a leader. Bang. Right away. I imagined I would be placed at the head of vast enterprises. I was always very upset that my employers didn't realize how brilliant I was and how talented, and why wasn't I at least executive vice president by the end of the first week. So I relate to that very much. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Della.
Hello, alcoholic. What is like so prominent for me is that war was such a terrible thing. Like these men saw stuff and dealt with stuff that they never had the coping skills to be able to deal with it. And I think a lot of veterans turn to alcohol to just numb themselves out from the horrors that were going on. And and then coming back from that, you still don't have the coping skills to deal with it. Like it just like mind blown. Like my father was a World War II vet. So it's like they never did have the coping skills to deal with what was going on at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. my grandfather, and my dad still serves, but you know, he only talked about it once. And it was one night he just unloaded everything and talked about it once. So, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you'd have resentments that would build up, all sorts of fun things that you would get to go along with that. Where are you? Marianne, Toronto.
Hi, friends. I am an alcoholic from Toronto. My name's Marianne. Grateful to be here. Grateful to be sober and see you all today. What I could identify is that he was doing what he thought was right, and he was doing all the things. Like, I was a leader. I went to war like everybody did. I was doing that too. I was a wife. I was a mother. I got warned about it too, but I didn't know how else to do it because inside I'm empty and I can't cope. And that was my answer. So I could really identify with him just saying, this is what I'm doing and it should be okay, but it wasn't. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Bev, were you going to say something? Bev, RVA? Gotcha.
Just that the amount of suicides among veterans is huge as well.
Yeah.
It's extremely high.
Even
That's
to
all.
this day.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Definite.
Even to
Worse
this day.
now maybe than ever before.
Yeah. Yeah. Beverly A. in Utah.
Hi, everybody. Beverly Alcoholic. Yeah, I love Bill's story too. I can completely identify with Bill. So, you know, it's important to remember that, you know, during this time, not only was Bill in the First World War, and he was seeing a lot of death around him, but there was also a great pandemic going on at the same time. So he was faced with all kinds of issues about life and death. And when he's walking into Winchester Cathedral, you know, I'm really struck by the line that where he says, you know, that they landed in England. He was in Winchester Cathedral, and that he was much moved, and he wandered outside. Why was Bill moved? Because previous to his getting sober, he was I guess he was an atheist, or maybe he was agnostic, but he was really moved by being in that cathedral. So something was already touching him. And the ominous warnings of his people at the time in the United States, there was the big movement, the temperance movement, and people were signing pledges and I won't drink. And, you know, alcohol was a big social problem. So that's all I wanted to share. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I don't know why I thought you lived in Vancouver. You live in Utah. Huh. So funny. But yeah, we're going to hear a lot more about temperance and about Bill's growing up and his relationship. It's funny. My grandma was a member of the Sons of Temperance. My mom knows all about it. It's all right. So we're on page 2. I took a night law course and obtained employment as an investigator for a surety company. The drive for success was on. I'd prove to the world I was important. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling that men of great genius conceived their best projects when drunk, that the most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived. By the time I had completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that would one day turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. It went into certain sureties, then cheap and rather unpopular. I rightly imagined that they would someday have a great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements. But my wife and I decided to go anyways. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. I discovered many more reasons later on. So here he goes, takes his night law course, and he's got that drive for success. And it says to here, I would prove to the world I was important. So it shows that little bit of his self-esteem was in the tank. His self-esteem was in the basement. Yet he thought himself super grandiose. I'm gonna be this leader. I'm gonna be amazing. But he had an inferiority complex, and I've heard this in the room so many times. He gets to Wall Street, and that, really sucked him in. You get there, and it's shiny, and everybody's got money, and you're putting people on pedestals, and you're just striving for all of these things, the pomp and the worship. He's got his best projects when drunk. Oh, did I have good ideas when I was drunk? 3 to 4 in the morning, I had my best ideas. And I would talk about the same things over and over and over again, these amazing ideas I had. And then the next day I, forgot them, or they seemed ridiculous, or I was embarrassed for having done them. But he kept convincing his wife that men of great genius had all their great ideas when they were drinking. He finishes the course, and after finishing it, he decided the law wasn't for him. He had already been sucked in by Wall Street, and that was the path he wanted to take. He had these great ideas. And even though his bosses and his friends said, no, those are crazy ideas, he's like, come on, Lois, let's go. My thinking is better than these other Wall Street people. And off they went. And we'll hear more about it in a second. Anybody want to share on this page? Anybody can relate? Mel?
Hello, Melanie, alcoholic. And the bit I could relate to on here was that I'd always mess up. I'd sort of start something and not show up for important events and that sort of thing. So, like, he starts his law course and then loses interest in it sort of halfway through, or he keeps looking for the next thing to do because he sees it starts off a good idea and then he soon starts it and he's looking for the next thing to do. He's like restless, I suppose, and that's what I was like. I was just like always looking for something else and always letting people down for when it was important events and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, so I went to dental hygienist school. I went to business school. I minored in biology. I majored in marketing, and then I went and took some more courses in accounting. I have a floral degree, floral arranging. I have my nutrition certificate, level 1 and 2, and now I design t-shirts. So I can relate. Absolutely. I'm like, oh, I have experience in that. People are like, what? Yep. Deborah's. Oh, you are there, Deborah. All right. I can see you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I don't know how many times I took the whole semester, got all the way to where finals were, and decided something else was more important than taking my final. I would, it was a big party up at the ski slopes, or we'd go the whole semester and just blow off the finals. I mean, it's ridiculous. And wouldn't even go back and clean it up. All I'd have to do is, challenge the course or whatever. But no, I never did.
Yep.
Craziness.
Crazy. Lucille.
Hi, yes, Lucille, alcoholic. So going to law school, you have to be accepted to go into law school. So Bill must have been very smart. Plus, he studied business and economics. So Yes, maybe he was grandiose in his ideas, but he did definitely have the intellectual smarts to do all of those courses that he did. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and I had a little misconception on this as well, and I don't know the history of university back then to now, but it doesn't say he went to law school. It says he took a law course. And so like for me, law school's a lot longer of a process. It's a lot more courses. So he took one course, not the whole program. I don't know if it was different then than it is now. That's the history I don't have. Kelly B. But yeah, he was really smart.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelly. I'm an alcoholic. Very grateful to be here today, and this is my second time going through the book with Kimberly, and I thank you very much for your service. I have learned a lot. What I related here to this part of the page, I know as myself of being an alcoholic and being employed by somebody, that would show my worth is when I worked for somebody, because I was the best cleaner, I was the best bartender, I was the fastest. I did everything 120%. And I even found time to clean in between. Like my managers, my bosses, they were always like, wow, and I think that's where I found that I received my self-esteem and my acceptance was through my work ability. And two, another thing that I wanted to relate to is, I don't know about some of you women, but I do know myself. When the kids were at school, my husband was at work, and I finally had a day off, I was going to do everything. I was going to wash the windows, I was going to vacuum, I was going to dust, I was going to cook a nice dinner, I was going to do all that. And of course, I would start drinking. And the more I drank, the more I got sidetracked, the more I did other things. And unfortunately, when everyone came home, if I was not passed out on the couch, the dishes would still be in the sink, the vacuum would still be in the middle of the floor, and yeah. But yet on other days, when I was drinking, I could work as hard as I could ever work. And the job would just never be done correctly. I do know that for now, for a fact, for today, with being sober today and doing the exact same job. It definitely turns out different. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much. And on a side note, just that I've got from, I always like adding the stuff that I've gotten through my mindset coaching and hypnotherapy and things that I do. We're brought up with the love is conditional and the praise, right? So even in school, if you do well, you get a sticker on your thing. And so there was this reward system that we've kind of had engraved in us, and we alcoholics take that to the whole next level. Like, I need it to be the scratch and sniff sticker. I can't just have a regular sticker. I want the scratch and sniff. And it was like, because I didn't ever feel good enough, and I needed that to make myself feel good. And that gets us into trouble. Bonnie, you put your hand down. Did you want to share? Yeah. Where'd she go? I think she hit the wrong.
There we go.
Well, I was like, poof, she's gone. We got you.
No, the wrong buttons. I'm reading this, and it made me think. Holy smokes! It made me think of something I haven't thought of for so many years, and it points out how, for myself, right from the get-go, I didn't have my first drink until I was about 20, and I was in university, and right away, I was hooked, and I would, rather than go to classes, this memory just came in. Rather than go to classes, I was at University of Victoria, it's right beside the ocean, right? So it was right beside the beach. I would sit on the beach playing strip poker with a whole pile of men. Me. And that was, and when he talks about how, he believed that the alcohol was actually helping him, I was convinced somehow that if I went to my English classes drunk, that I would have better and more free-flowing ideas. Anyways, I only lasted at university for 2 years, to say the least. But it was crazy. crazy right from the get-go. So thank you for that memory.
You're welcome. Thanks for sharing it.
By the way, I lost a lot at strip poker.
I love it. See, you'd never guess. I remember this 92-year-old lady was at a meeting one time, and she got up, and I was traveling, it wasn't, and she got up and she's like, back when I was a streetwalker and I just about fell off my chair. I was like, this little old lady? I loved it. I love it. Good job. Oh, yeah, Della. Whoops, I muted you. Do it again.
That was awesome, Bonnie. That was awesome. I love it. So all of a sudden, this just popped out at me too. I commenced to forge a weapon that one day would turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. So yeah, a boomerang comes back. A boomerang, you throw it and it's gonna come back and it's gonna cut you to ribbons. So I've highlighted and underlined that one too, that all of our greatest ideas, might bite us in the butt later. Yeah, pretty cool.
Well, and you think of it with anything, all that stuff you throw out there, like if it's negative stuff or like tied to a resentment, you put that stuff out there, it usually comes back and gets you. Joanne, with her beautiful fall background. That's why I want to go to Maine or Connecticut. Okay, gotta unmute. You gotta unmute. You gotta unmute.
I thought if I just didn't touch it, it would magically.
I tried.
Which brings me into talking about what I was going to talk about. This is very right on where I'm at right now. Is when the best way to describe it, if you drink through a bottle long enough, your vision, what you see gets more contained, and I find that with my isms and my ego, that sometimes I just don't see the whole picture. And I see this when we read Bill's story. He just, with his ego and everything, he just never really saw in an honest way his world, his reality. And today was an interesting situation for me where a person, I work in child care is the best way to describe it. And the person above me that had an executive director has left. And I've only been working part-time because of my age and also a knee injury that I had. And I made it clear that I was interested, and she was surprised. So she goes, well, yeah, I really would like, you to do it. And I was like so high. It was that feeling of, oh, I'm wanted. I'm seen as being, capable and all of that. And then I got home and I, did some work in the inventory about it. And I am just not up for the whole position. And I had to humbly say, you really need a younger person, because I'm just not in a position at my age and ability to go take people, children sledding every day. Like, I don't want to step on snow. I don't want to drudge through snow and everything. And I don't want to lie and say, yeah, I'm capable of doing that. So I had to be really honest. And I was really sad. I was really sad for a few minutes, but I have my integrity because I see the whole story. And what I want best for her and the children is for someone that can take them sledding almost every day after school. It's an after school program. And to be able to say, hey, if you have anything in the office, let me know. But it's sometimes really hard to get your ego out of the way. And especially as you get older, you just can't do the things you did when you were 30. And it's really humbling, and sometimes it's really sad, but It's okay. I'm being honest, and it's better to do that than to lay in the snow because you hurt yourself because you're 60 years old and you shouldn't be sledding down a mountain. So, anyways, that's what I wanted to share. It's easy, if you stay open minded as you read these pages, you can identify, what he was going through, where his head was at, his ego, and what the booze did. And we learn our lessons well, and sometimes the lessons don't go away as fast as the sobriety comes along. So that's all I wanted to share. Thanks.
That's right. And we tend to keep getting the same situations till we learn the lesson, and they tend to get more painful each time. You don't do sledding and I don't do camping, and I'm humble enough to admit it. Leslie P.
I'm unmuted. Okay.
Yes, you are.
Morning. Leslie, alcoholic. I was thinking of a few other things, but what Della had said about the boomerang and the effects of it and all but cut me to ribbons. And I had an episode this morning with not me, but my husband, who did not attend our daughter's wedding. And I told him he had an episode this morning which really blew my mind. He was convinced that 4 days ago I was down at the Smitty's with some guy. And once I realized, I had to talk to my counselor ASAP. And once I realized that it's either an alcoholic psychosis or it's the beginnings of a dementia brought on by alcoholism. So I'm not too sure yet which one. But what I did say to him was that he had basically fucked up, pardon my French, by not coming to his daughter's wedding, and that she will never see him again, and that she will never talk to him again. And that is the reality of this disease. You sow what you're going to reap what you sow. And I did a couple of boners to myself when you were talking about taking courses and stuff like that. I had taken a computer course thinking that I was going to, figure this shit out. But I had one too many coolers before the course. I didn't remember a blessed thing. How I even got there is beyond me. And to think of, like you could tell when somebody's drunk, right? You could tell when they're in their cups or they're not quite right. You could even smell it on them. And here I went to class thinking that, everything's fine with me. What's your problem? But just a few things that came to my mind. So I'm glad I'm here and glad I'm sober for sure.
Thank you so much, Leslie. All right. Okay, Lois, right. We gave up our positions and off we roared on a motorcycle. The sidecar stuffed with tent, blankets, a change of clothes, and 3 huge volumes of a financial reference service. In our heels to boot. Our friends thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. Perhaps they were right. I had some success at speculation, so we had a little money. But we once worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing on our small capital. That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. We covered the whole eastern United States in a year. At the end of it, my reports to Wall Street procured me a position there and the use of a large expense account. The exercise of an option brought in more money, leaving us with a profit of several $1,000s for that year. For the next few years, fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. My judgment and ideas were followed by many to the tune of paper millions. The great boom of the late 20s was seething and swelling. Drink was taking an important and exhilarating part in my life. There was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. Scoffers could scoff and be damned. I made a host of fair weather friends. My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. The remonstrances of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. There were many unhappy scenes in our sumptuous apartment. There had been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife, helped at times by extreme drunkenness, kept me out of these scrapes. All right, so you can hear the progressive nature of his illness. It's getting worse and worse. They went to that. They went on that trip. He actually was successful. His drunk ideas came to fruition, and he made some money, and he got himself a good job. And now he's in the heyday of Wall Street. He had arrived, and I can picture it, right? He's in all of these fancy bars, and, he's the man, and he's getting all this praise and attention, and money's going, and drinks are flying, and, girls are dancing, and it's amazing, right? Like, I get it. And then, of course, it talks at the bottom there where now his drinking takes more serious proportions. It's getting progressively worse. He's getting in arguments with his friends, and it's their fault, not his. So their remonstrances, terminated them in a row, and now he's a lone wolf because he doesn't agree with his friends. So whether it's like, hey, man, you better cut back on your drinking, or the disagreements over business deals, we're not sure. But he's starting to have disagreements with these friends, and now he's a lone wolf. I've been there. I've been the girl that goes to the bar by herself because nobody wants to hang out with her. The best friend is my bartender and the bouncer. Been there. And my favorite, I love when he talks about his sumptuous affairs that never happened. Bill is a known womanizer. It's a little bit of ego kept him from cheating on his wife, and a little bit of whiskey problems. But no more comment on that from me. Anybody? Allison, go ahead.
Hi, Allison, alcoholic. This really, really gets to me when he says I've arrived and it's all fabulous. I think this is, for me, the crux of alcoholism because of the glamour commercials. I mean, weddings, Christmas, any imaginable thing, nobody is standing there drinking Kool-Aid. It's just everywhere. And I actually moved to London when I was 30, and I had a huge job, and people start drinking at noon, and it's wonderful, and everybody jokes about it, and it's part of the culture. And it is so difficult to finally admit you're an alcoholic. And to this day, pulling myself away from that glamour, that isn't this just being part of it all? So tough. I mean, yes, I get it intellectually. I don't need to stand with a glass of wine, but the sense that I'm still missing out somehow has not left me. And I'm only just a little over 4 months, but that is going to be my biggest challenge, is just not feeling like I'm missing out, because it'll kill me. But I totally understand Bill's involvement with everything. We're human. Look at advertising. My God, it's all a fabulous time. So I think it really indicates to us that it isn't all our fault. It's everywhere, and dealing with it is a lifelong commitment. So that's my dilemma. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much. And you know what? That's that mark that we always want to hit too, right? It's, we have this feeling of inferiority. We have this self-esteem that's in the basement, and we're always seeking, because we're worshiping and praising other things. So that's what we're trying to do. And then we hit that mark, and we've arrived. I'm the shit now. I'm important. I got my fancy office. I've got my expense report. I've got people who are looking up to me, right? And then we let it go to our head, and then boom, we hit it. But we're always trying to maintain that point. And that's where people say, I overshot the mark. I overshot the mark. I overshot the mark. And it's like you can never hit that glory again. It's like you get your 15 minutes of fame and then you're like trying to recapture it over and over and over again. For me, I'll give you a little bit of advice on the social setting stuff. For me, like it's really weird to explain, but it's like I've attached my ego to my sobriety. That's a part of my identity now. And so my ego kind of protects my sobriety in that I'm the sober girl, right? So at parties, I've convinced myself I'm fancy because I have, not that I'm better than anyone. I'm not better because I'm sober, but I'm like, I'm fancy because I'm drinking my Perrier with my lemon. And then if it comes up in conversation, I don't feel like it's a lesser than. I feel like it's just part of me now, right? And I'm like, oh, I haven't drank in so long. And I don't see it as a negative. So it's a little bit of mindfuck stuff that's not included in the book, but that we just kind of have to figure out our method, right? People thought I did it because I was the health freak, because I did that whole nutrition thing for a bit. And they're like, oh, but this is organic wine. And I'm like, that's not why I don't drink. It's not because it's not organic, right? So I'm just like, no, I just don't drink. And it's kind of become my persona in social situations, and nobody questions me anymore. Leslie P.
Unmute. Oh, there I am. Yes, I was just relating to, we gave up our positions and off we roared on the motorcycles. I did that 40 years ago. And it was a good time. We were on the road for 2.5 months. But then the reality, now that I look back 40 years later, all the drinking and the unkind words, what did it really do for my life? It gave me a kid, which I'm very proud of. But the one thing that struck me was the drink was taking an important and exhilarating part in my life. There was a loud talk in the jazz places uptown. It's just like it was party central, right? Like lots of stuff happening in those the heyday of the drink. But I was just trying to think back on how exhilarating his life was. That the drinking was taking an important and exhilarating part of my life. So with when you were saying about him womanizing and stuff like that, I'm just trying to put myself into that way of thinking. What was going on with the motorcycle riding, the tent? We're here. We're crazy. That's all. That's all I got to say. It just hit me like that.
Absolutely. And how many of us changed locations or moved? Me, I'm getting divorced. I'm getting a new house. It's going to be a fresh start. It's going to be great. Off I go. Della.
Okay. There had been no real infidelity. Like, I'm bringing it into 2020. It's kind of like I just texted her. There wasn't real infidelity, but there's that emotional infidelity that happens. So yeah, it's just, every time we read this book, something new comes out. Look at that.
Yep. I gotta stay away from that sentence. Please.
Hi.
Hi.
Louise here from Montreal.
Hello.
I don't know if you can see me. Hi, how are you? It's the first time I've attended, but I've seen you often. So I was just thinking, I was 24 years sober, and I lost my sobriety, and I'm back, but for the grace of God. And I struggled coming back very, very hard. So that's, I'm very happy I'm back completely. So, just for today. But for those 24 years, I did, I came into the program at 20. And of course, I did exactly like you, Kim. I attached my ego to the fact that I was a non-drinker. right? And I was traveling the world, all over the world, not as a stewardess, but I was selling IT, and I was in these conferences, and why don't you drink? And I'm like, I'm not a drinker. I'm not a drinker. And I started saying something like, it's really bad for my skin, you know? And as I grew older, people would say to me, oh my God, you look so young. And I said, yeah, it's because I don't drink, you know? And it was all of that. And when I started drinking, it was like people would say, what the hell? You know? And it was like, well, you know, there was like massive tragic events and whatever. There's no reason to pick up, but except that it's a mental malady and, you know, followed by everything that comes with it. But I was just reflecting on that, and it's so great to be able to share with you women. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, 2:00 in the afternoon here in Montreal on a rainy day, and we're all shut down here in Montreal, right?
Yeah.
So pray for us.
Absolutely. We're praying for a lot of people these days. Glad to have you here. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I don't see any more little blue hands, and we've only got 3 minutes left. So let's say the Serenity Prayer, and then we can have some fellowship time with the ladies. All righty. Oh, you can unmute if you'd like. Let me hit that. There you go. All right. Who makes this all possible? God. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Thanks so much, ladies. I love this new little virtual holding hands thing. I'm like, it's my new favorite jam.
I have to run.